Hello, music fans. Welcome to the Death by Unicorn channel for another episode of my segment called What's New 2023, where I talk about new albums that came out in metal, rock, and prog that I listened to, and I give my first impressions on them. I'm going to talk about a bunch of albums that came out on May 5th. I think there's 8 of them that I listened to, and I'll talk about them in my order of preference, starting with Vintersea and their album Woven into Ashes. This is progressive melodic death metal with black metal and post metal influences, and it's the third album by this American band. They have a female vocalist. She does both singing and screaming. There's a lot of intense guitar playing and fast drumming here, lots of energy and brutality, but also beautiful atmosphere and melody. So for fans of other bands that do that, like Ginger with the female vocalist there who alternates between the brutal stuff and beautiful atmospheric and melodic stuff, my favorite track at the moment is At the Gloaming Void, and this album will probably be in my year-end top 40. I'm liking it a lot. Secondly, I want to talk about Currents and their album The Death We Seek. This is progressive melodic metalcore, kind of genty. It's also a third album by an American band. And I heard the title track that was released ahead of time. I enjoyed the guitar riffs, the intense screams, the catchy chorus. It reminded me of early 2000s metalcore a bit, but with a little more of the modern gent sprinkles. So if you're a fan of early 2000s metalcore like Killswitch Engage and Bullet for My Valentine, but you also like some more modern sounds of bands like Monuments and Era, it sounds kind of like those bands combined. I think it's most close to Era in terms of the sound. This could possibly make my year-end top 40 or 50. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to listen to it more, but it will almost certainly be in my top 100 albums of the year. I'm not sure if I'll make a video going through all 100, but probably do a top 40 or 50 at the end of the year, and maybe if enough people care, I'll do a top 100. Now we'll move on to some albums that probably won't make my top 100, but they're all still pretty decent. Next I'm going to talk about Unearth and their album The Wretched, the Ruinous. This is also metalcore, but it's more straightforward metalcore than the Currents album. Not as much of not really that progressive, not as much melody, more brutal, not as much gent. This is kind of more standard metalcore. It's the 8th album by this American band, and they have great riffs as well. And I think it's actually kind of great to hear a metalcore band who stays heavy and doesn't go too far into pop or electronic territory. This band stays pretty heavy the whole time, so if that sounds like something you want to listen to, check this out. It's Unearth. And next I want to talk about an EP by a band called Teeth, which is called A Biblical Worship of Violence. And this is hardcore punk with some metalcore, mathcore, and thrash metal influences. And this is a 3-piece band based out of Fort Erie, Ontario, and it features members of Dead and Divine, Every Time I Die, Norma Jean, and Straight Reads the Line. And those are all bands that I like a lot, so I was excited for this, expected it to be pretty good, and it was. If this was a full LP, it would probably be up higher on this list, but I've got it, I'm mentioning it fourth today because it's just an EP, so not as long, not really a full chunk. I think it's like under 15 minutes, honestly. It's just like a quick blast of, I don't know, 4 or 5 songs. I forget how many songs. But I'm really looking forward to this band putting out a full-length album in the future. I really hope they do. This is extremely hardcore, very dissonant and chaotic, so it's really only for people who like that sound. It's possibly even more so, more hardcore than the bands that I mentioned that the members are from. But imagine Dead and Divine, Every Time I Die, and Norma Jean, and Straight Reads the Line, but step it up a notch in terms of hardcore. Less melody, more dissonance, more chaos. Pretty interesting though. Next, I want to talk about The Devil Wears Prada and the deluxe edition of their album Color Decay. This is the deluxe edition of their 2022 album. It features 2 new songs that weren't on that album, as well as 4 acoustic renditions of previous songs, 2 live versions of previous songs, and 2 remixes. I thought Color Decay was an okay album, but nothing special, unfortunately. Maybe their second weakest album they've done yet after The Act. That was my least favorite of theirs. I think this band peaked way back in 2009 with their album called With Roots Above and Branches Below, which is a great album. I hope they one day either go back to that sound or push the envelope and do some more innovative stuff in a different direction in the future. Maybe more progressive or maybe heavier. I hope they don't go in the more pop or electronic or radio rock or butt rock direction like a lot of their contemporary metalcore bands did, like Bring Me the Horizon and Architects. I just don't want to hear this band going into that sound. I don't think it's what they do best. I'm fine if they keep the catchy poppy choruses because they've always done that well, but I think the riffs are kind of missing, and that's kind of what made With Roots Above and Branches Below such a great album. And everything was just so memorable on that older album of theirs, and iconic. I think they need to find something like that again. Next I want to talk about Smashing Pumpkins and their album Atum Act 3. This is alternative rock with pop influences, and it's their 12th album, I believe. I think that's it if you count Atum Act 1 and Atum Act 2 as separate albums. But it's kind of like one big triple album on Spotify right now, and there's solid and decent songs here, and especially on this Act 3 to conclude the Atum series of albums and to like finish off this triple album. And everything on this triple album, Atum, is good, but I feel slightly underwhelmed by it all. I feel like there's a lot of music included with all 3 acts. It's a little bit much, and nothing's really drawing me back to it. So that's kind of how I feel about the Smashing Pumpkins' latest music. I've got 2 more quick ones to mention, and they're from kind of older school heavy metal hard rock bands that are still going. They're still making some good stuff, but just not as exciting as younger, more innovative bands at this point. So Tygers of Tang is one of them, and they released Bloodlines. They're a traditional heavy metal band. This is their 13th album. They're from the UK, and they started way back in 1978. They were part of the new wave of British heavy metal, and I listened to the single Edge of the World. I could hear they're still going strong. They're rocking hard given their age. They're playing shredding guitar solos, performing epic soaring vocals. So I decided to check this out even though I don't know much about them. It was pretty good, but not quite on the level of like the best work of some comparable bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. But if you like that kind of sound, if that's your favorite sound, I think you'll probably like this. I like that sound sometimes, but I prefer kind of the classics and the top shelf work in that sound, and I don't think this will be one of the classics, while there are still some good moments for people who like that sound. And lastly, I'm going to talk about Winger and their album 7. This is hard rock with heavy metal and progressive influences. It's their 7th album. They're an American band who started way back in 1987. They were kind of more of a part of the hair metal or glam metal scene. But they have some progressive vibes to their music that make them a bit more interesting than many of their contemporaries to me. I heard the single Proud Desperado, and it's really catchy, so I decided to check this out. I didn't expect it to be revolutionary or make my top 40 of the year or anything, but it was solid. It was well crafted. I think this is kind of Christians in terms of lyrical themes from what I heard. I didn't deeply analyze the lyrics, but I heard some, code words like resurrection, and I think they said like faith a few times and things like that. So it made me think that it was Christian. I didn't look deeply into it, but it's not really my thing. But the performances and composition were really good all around, but still just not exciting enough to come back to often. Pretty safe, traditional hard rock stuff here, but really well done if you like the old school hard rock sound. And that's it for this episode of What's New 2023. Hopefully something that I mentioned here sounds of interest to you and you check it out and you enjoy it. Or if you have suggestions for me, definitely leave some below in the comments, and I'm happy to check anything out that gets recommended. Or what did you think about all of these? Do you love some of the ones that I ranked lower down? Do you hate some of the ones that I put closer to the top of my list? Let me know, and stay tuned for next time. Peace out.